Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Enterprise Fleet Summit. I'm Anthony Smith, Chief Economist here at FreightWaves, and I have the absolute honor and privilege to be chatting with one of the best in the industry. I have one and only Rick Larkin here to join us. He is the Chief Information Officer over at BCB Transport and owner of BCB Live. Rick, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Anthony, what's going on, sir?
It's great to see you, Rick. Everything's great on my end. Of course, it's a little bit of a different time now within freight and transportation. Um, the entire industry as a whole has really kind of, I would say, taken a step back for quite a few months, and now we're just kind of at this lull, and now everyone's expecting, okay, it has to go up at some point in time. Curious, of course, to hear on your end, on the enterprise side, what are going to be some of the biggest challenges that you've seen thus far, and how do those really kind of compare to what we see on the owner-operator side?
Gotcha. Let me just kind of talk a little bit about the end of June. I will say this, Anthony, for the first time all year, and it seems like for a while, it did feel like an end of quarter at the end of June. So it was nice to see you had a lot of freight moving. It just felt like the end of quarters used to be. In a month, in a quarter, it had been a little while since we saw like that, but we did see an uptick in freight, probably our heaviest week of the entire year for both trucking and brokerage. So I thought there was an interesting feeling around that time. You know, you felt the scrambling going on, looking for trucks. Who are we going to give this to? Do we price it enough? It was the first time we had seen that and felt that in some time. You know, it was definitely a new feeling for this year.
And I mean, that's really the big thing, is that we're looking for those signs because, of course, we want to call a trend as it's starting to really kind of prop up, but not be too soon to say, all right, this is going to be the new wave. And then next thing you know, it just kind of falters off. But when we're looking at overall demand for freight, of course, there's upstream, there's downstream. Downstream demand has really been propped up, of course, by the jobs market and consumer spending, leveraging credit cards, stuff like that. We're going to be some of the biggest variables or factors that you see going into the second half of the year that's going to really need to be present in order to really prop up volumes overall.
You know, I was just eating lunch today with the bankers, and we talked about that specifically and talking about the interest rate hikes that we know we're going to see, and maybe we'll see another one here in the fourth quarter as well. But Anthony, I just tell you, sometimes I just feel that we are the psyche away a little bit from making an upturn. Meaning, I just think when we hear another interest hike, that it's, obviously it's gonna create change. It's going to change how we buy. I think if we, my feelings are that we go a fourth quarter perhaps with no rate hike, and I think that alone, because I think we felt a little bit about that in the back half of the second quarter. Maybe that spurs a little purchasing to give us that fourth quarter that we didn't have last year. I mean, I can't think of ever a time that we didn't have that seasonality, that fourth quarter, that Christmas rush. It was like non-existent last year. Do we go 2 years without that? I mean, do you? I'll ask you. I mean, do you think we go a December without that Christmas rush again?
I think we can definitely seize that there could be some activity, but I think really right now what we're seeing in the consumer, of course, there's so much spending on the services aspect of those consumers that have been able to hold on to their jobs, not impacted by layoffs, higher paying roles, or out traveling, they're spending money, hotel, leisure. That's where so many of the job openings are. And I think the big risk comes in when we see, and if we see a shakeup in the job market right now, that I think there's over 900 million job openings in the US, unemployment rate still under 4% as of now, and the initial jobs claim still in, I would say, code yellow phase, not in code red right now. So I think the job market is holding up to support some of that, but there's just so many catalysts that would say, hey, you know what, we have to slow this down, especially with looming student loan repayments, credit card debt hitting record highs. There's so many of those headwinds I think are really going to be potential, stoppers for activity. But like you said, we've had some muted seasons, and it would really kind of make sense to see some activity here after what we've seen so far in the first half. It's just so many scary variables happening right now. When you're looking at some of the positives for fleets right now. Can you talk to where energy sits on that? Because right now, energy has been something that we saw spike earlier on a few quarters ago, but now as of late, we've seen energy prices really kind of be a little bit down there. So that's kind of been a little bit helpful. Am I right on that one?
Yeah, so for the asset side of the business, we're blessed enough for most of us to have fuel contracts that are kind of baked into our contracts. So, when fuel's up, I'll flip it another way. So when fuel begins its downward slide, even carriers like us or large brokers, well, we also see that margin tend to slide because you're not paying that fuel surcharge to that independent contractor. You're paying market pricing is what you pay. So the lower those that fuel comes down, we actually see it affect us negatively on that brokerage side of the business. On the asset side, for the larger carriers, well, we're going to have we're protected. When you're running 97, 98% of your freight with a customer, you're protected on that side. Again, though, who it affects is kind of goes into our earlier conversation, or the question you asked is that independent contractor side. Boy, I don't know, have I seen a tougher market for a lot of those folks in a long time. This is a tough market. And Anthony, I also think it's a tough market for the independent contractor because you see a lot of companies that have independent contractors and say those company trucks. Well, there has to be a decision at some point that says that you have to make sure that your trucks are staying busy, they're staying productive, that they're hitting the revenue that you have on your fixed cost. The independent contractor in general comes in there and they take the overflow. They take the surplus of freight. And when there's no surplus of freight, they don't get the miles that they were used to. They're not getting the percentage of the revenue that they were used to. And a lot of companies, I've seen that, and I talk to people, and I've seen it ourselves. We've reduced our trucking size from an operational from a truck count, but we haven't lost the freight. We're just taking that freight and moving it over to that logistics, that brokerage side of the business.
I think that's brilliant right there. And I mean, Rick, we're looking at current market conditions. Of course, like you said, just being active is going to really be the winning factor for a lot of folks, especially on the owner operator or independent contractor side. We're looking at new entrants into the market. What would you kind of give as advice if someone is maybe just now getting into the market? Maybe they're looking to drive for an enterprise fleet. Maybe they're just got their CDL. What are going to be some of the words of advice that you have for this current market that they're coming into?
Yeah, for the new entrants, and when I talk about the new entrants, if I'm referring to somebody entering into the business under their own authority, hey, don't, right? It's not the time to do it. If you're going to come on as a driver, as a independent contractor, as a company driver, it's just not a bad time to surround yourself with the larger companies. Now, I know there's that you hear a lot of beef around that. If I'm talking to a new entrant right now, I'm going to say, you're going to hear a lot of rumors about these large companies, how they don't do this and don't do that. But here's the deal. In today's market, most of them have a great deal of contracted freight, which allows you as that independent contractor or new company driver to perhaps get the miles you need. But it may also be the difference in you getting home to see your family, to create a life around it. For you that's decided to go buy a truck, you're going to see a lot of cheap prices right now. We've seen prices now back into the used trucks, the 3-year-old, 5 and 6-year-old truck, going back into pricing we saw back in 2018 and 2019. So it may seem like a great time to buy a truck because the pricing's back down, but the pricing that you're going to get out there on that market, it may not justify it. And the big question still is, can remain around parts, around getting your truck in that shop and taking priority over those large carriers as well. A lot to think about when you're going to be an independent contractor in today's market. Number one, you're going to live off the spot market pricing. And Anthony, I'm going to say it, you cannot make a living today if 100% of your freight is in that spot market pricing. You can't make it in today's market. Now people are making it, Anthony, and here's the reason why. If you're making it in today's market off that spot market pricing, there's a good chance that something's sliding because you're going to pay yourself. You got to make sure you take care of your family. We get that side there, but are you making your truck payments? And is that truck getting the maintenance that it needs to sustain itself, for the long haul? And that's the part, Anthony, that I just think is, that is the big struggle with the independents today.
It's definitely going to be a rough one, especially as we continue to move throughout the remainder of the second half of this year. And Rick, I mean, that was some amazing insight, especially for those that are looking to get in the industry or just now getting into the industry. And of course, over at BCB Live, you are the safest station in the nation, and you are all about safety and education. On that front, what have been some of the trends that you've seen on the safety side? Have you seen overall as an industry that their numbers have been really favorable, comparable to the past, and in terms of overall safety?
That's a great question, and unfortunately, it takes so long for us to get that data from the government. But when I see and I talk to trucking companies today, I do believe that most of us have made a commitment to the safety equipment, to the tractors that have all the safety features that they have with it. Again, if you're gonna join a company, that to me is a must. If you're gonna join a company and they're bragging about their trucks aren't governed, they're bragging about it's about how many miles you can get. That's what makes a good driver. Then those are another key that you're with the wrong company. At any time, Anthony, I will say this: there is no doubt that there's more pride in safety in today's trucking environment that's ever been there. And I know there's reasons why, right? We have all these lawsuits that are going on, but I genuinely think that trucking companies want to get you home safe, that our job is turned from getting miles and doing all this to making sure that we get you home and to make sure that you get somebody else's family home safe while you're out there on the road. It has been amazing to me to see the transformation in our industry towards the safety side. It doesn't mean we're perfect, but there's more effort today, not just lip service, but true, genuine, heartfelt decisions made on safety, really because of the technology that's out there today. Technology has been an amazing help towards trucking companies, towards this industry regarding safety.
And that's a huge one. And I'm sorry if I misquote this, but at BCB, I believe it's be safe, communicate, and if you can, be on time. Can you talk to about that C aspect of communication? Because I can only imagine that part really just doesn't go into, communicating outside of the company, but also communicating within your four walls.
Yeah, that communication, is there anything more difficult than that? Even when you sit next to somebody right here next to you, sometimes you forget to talk to about things you really should do. Communication, though, with our drivers, communication within anybody's drivers has got to be there. Here's the thing. Communication just doesn't mean I sent them emails or I sent this message or newsletter went out. That's not communication. The communication piece that I speak about is, what are you doing to really verbally touch their lives? What are you doing to make a difference? Are you really communicating? Are you getting in front of them? Do drivers around here, do they know where their strengths and our strengths as a company are? And when a driver doesn't know that, we haven't done our part to communicate them where we need help on the truck side. Don't be afraid to talk to your people. It's something that's so critical to making a company successful, especially when you're dealing with the safety and the culture around safety.
And Rick, of course, I have to end it off with this one. It's going to be around relationships, because if there's one thing, of course, you're an educator. You really kind of hone in on the safety. You also are insightful, but it doesn't matter if you have all this knowledge in your head if you're not able to communicate it efficiently, if you're not a people person, if you can't build out those relationships. Can you talk to that aspect of that, being a relationship builder, being a people person, especially during slower freight times or freight environments?
Yeah, so so listen, as an owner of a trucking company, you may not be the jacks of all trades. Myself, I may not be that warm and fuzzy person that you may want to come to when something's going wrong in your life. But I make sure I have people around me that are. But here's the deal. At the end of the day, myself, my business partner, anybody that's sitting in our office, there's one thing that's for certain, is that your life is that important to us. That, honest to God, I say this, and there is a love for our drivers within the company, and that's got to be the case at any trucking company out there. The love is just a thing of appreciation. The love is a thing that says, I'm going to get you back home safe. The love is, I'm going to make sure that you're making enough money to make a living, because your kids have the same dreams that my kids do. And you, as a mom or a dad, you have the exact same feelings that I have. We want to create success. Together, we've got to be able to do that. It takes a relationship, because everything's not perfect. There are tough times in trucking, but we have got to bear down together and take care of one another. Things you can do out there on the road during tough times. Hey, fuel's expensive. Watch your idle time. Hey, get out and look. Make sure you don't back up into anything. And on the trucking side, hey, talk to your people. Make sure that when you sit them down for a day, you're not just paying them 25 or 50, or maybe you don't pay them anything if they don't say anything. Take care of them. This is something we're in together. And if we truly want to make our industry better than it is today, and Anthony, there aren't people lined up to come and jump into this trucking industry. We've got to fix that. That's on us to fix. Until people are lined up saying, I want to work this, I want to be in this industry, we all have a lot of work to do.
Rick, I don't know if we could have capped it off better than that. All I know is that that type of authenticity is something that you can't replicate, and it speaks volumes when you have that type of environment and culture, because you're truly taking care of your people. The rest will all fall into place. Rick, thank you so much for joining me for this fireside chat. And if people want to reach out, how can they find you?
You can email me at rick.larkin@bcblive.tv or bcbtransport.com. You can look us on the website. You can tune in to bcblive.tv on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. We're going to be there because we are the safest station in the nation. Our job is to help you be a little safer.
Awesome. Rick, thank you so much for your time, and thank you all so much for tuning in. Be sure to stay watching, because we have plenty more content coming up. See you soon.